Glenn Nichols from Retrograde Guitars, and this is why I built this for Premier Guitar. So the biggest inspiration behind my guitars is vintage laminate top arch tops. When I built my first one, I was working for a classical guitar builder, and I was French polishing all day. I was French polishing like 40 hours a week. And then in my off time, I was doing repairs and restorations. And at one point, I had two really big restorations. One was a Gibson ES 125 from the 60s. And then the other one was a Martin GT 70, also from the 60s. And they were really in-depth restorations. So I had to take the guitars apart, refinish them, put them back together, set them up, wiring, pickups, all that. So by the time I was done with that, two things happened. One, I really understood the construction of these old laminate guitars. And two, I really wanted one. Like I needed one of these guitars, but I couldn't afford an old vintage guitar. So because I had access to a guitar shop, I decided to build one. And since I was going to build one, I didn't want to do a replica or anything like that. So, I started designing my own shape, and I built the molds, and I started building the guitar. And because I was working in a classical shop, I was sort of surrounded by those materials. I was surrounded by classical builders and just that whole sort of mentality. So what happened in the end is I ended up with this mashup of like 1950s Chicago factory laminate top and like old world European classical lutherie. And it just happened organically. So like the mashup and the combination, I think it really worked because it wasn't labored over. It wasn't like some idea where, I'll put these two things together. It just naturally happened because I wanted a guitar. And then while I was finishing the guitar, somebody came through the shop and saw it in the corner, and they were like, "Hey, what's that?" And I sold the guitar before it was even finished. And that made me realize that, maybe other people are interested in this too. And that's sort of how the snowball effect started happening. The most unique characteristic, first of all, it's only me. So I only make about 16 guitars a year. So that in itself, just because I'm a singular builder, each guitar is going to have its unique qualities. That's sort of just a byproduct of having a handmade instrument. Even if you send me a picture and say, I want that guitar, I can make it look like that guitar, but each one seems to sort of have its own spirit and its own qualities that make it special. And then, more technically, they're laminated. So the backs and tops are laminated in a vacuum press. I don't do it the old way with like a male and female mold and put it in a vise or back your car over it or something. I do it in a vacuum press. So you just need the male mold, and then the press, it sucks all of the air out of it to get the arch shape. And then the varnish, that's super unique, and that's something that I learned working in the classical world. So I make all my varnishes at home. I cook them up on my kitchen stove, and they're what's called a spirit varnish. So it's grain alcohol, shellac. I throw some other resins in there, and I have different grades of varnish that go on at different times through the process. There's also hemp oil involved, a little plaster of Paris. It's a whole sort of artistic process that I developed through restoring classical guitars. All the colors are hand rubbed. All the varnish is hand rubbed. I don't spray. This can get confusing to people because a lot of people call French polish a finish, right? Like, that's a French polish guitar. But that can get confusing because a French polish can be any number of actual varnishes. So in my vocabulary, the material is the spirit varnish, and the application, the technique, is a French polish. So I like to say that my guitars are varnished rather than French polished, because the varnish is unique to me. the varnish is more like an antique piece of furniture rather than like an industrial coating. It's not an automotive, it's not a thick automotive sort of finish. And I mean, that's what nitro is. Nitro wasn't invented to spray on wood. It was invented to spray on cars, right? And then the guitar industry took it because it was quicker and easier. And that's why you get all these old relic guitars. Nitro doesn't want to stick to wood. It's not a wood finish. I sprayed nitro for almost a decade. I used to live in a lacquer bucket. So I got to French polishing by working my way through lacquer and then trying to find an alternative. Okay, if I could get my guitar in the hands of anyone, any time period, first of all, I got to go living, and I would say Susan Tedeschi. She's just number one in my book. She's sort of a hometown hero in the Boston area, and when you take the idea of like taking something old and making it your own and then moving it forward, nobody's doing that better than Tedeschi Trucks Band. And you know, she's got style and class and soul, man. It's that's my number one. If it was any time period, I would have to go with Hubert Sumlin. I considered Muddy Waters, but taking the Telecaster away from Muddy would be a crime to humanity. So we're going to go with Hubert. If I had to build anything other than guitars, you know, I started this whole journey as a painter, like illustrator. I went to art school and I started building canvases, and that was my introduction to the wood shop. That's what got me building functional things. So if I wasn't building guitars, I still would have been hit with that question of like, how do I take hand skills and creativity and how do I make a living off of it? I think that's all artists are sort of hit with that reality at some point. So I would guess that I would be in some sort of trade. Maybe I'd be building houses, maybe finish carpentry, but I would have had to figure out the puzzle of like, how do I work with my hands and actually survive? What piece of gear is a perfect complement to my guitars? So I have a Victoria Vicky Verb. That's my favorite amp. I believe it's a Princeton circuit. I'm sure he did something a little different. I'm not sure about the specifics of it, but that's sort of what I think makes my guitars sound best, is that Fender style, vintage circuit of some sort, whether it's a Princeton or, you can't go wrong with a deluxe reverb. And that all the way down to a Champ. I mean, I have, like in the background here, the one with the little circle, that's a Champ clone. And then there's a Tweed clone next to it. And even the Bandmaster, it's not really a Bandmaster. It's someone turned it into a Bassman.